we really did win, didn't we? David Pakman has left the left. Of all the people. Let me play the clip for you so you can hear it for yourself. There's a little nuance to it, but listen. He's concerned. Nobody wants to just dive right in. Even Anna Kasparian was slow about being like the left has gone nuts. Even Dave Rubin was not, just an overnight thing. David Pakman is now exhibiting the basics of leaving the left. Did you guys know that when that viral video from Prager went out called Why I Left the Left from Dave Rubin, Dave didn't actually intend on stating that phrase, I left the left. Dave's intention in that video was the left is bad. And the interpretation that they took was that Dave had left the left. And so even Rubin was doing something similar. Let me put it this way. David Pakman is saying I'm not the next Rubin while doing literally the exact same thing every disaffected liberal has done when they've gotten red-pilled.
And the only reason he's saying I'm not the next Rubin is because they have this idea that Rubin was bad for doing what he did when all he did was acknowledge that the left is crazy.
Here's the clip.
Have not changed in terms of my views.
None of us have.
What has changed, as I pointed out yesterday, is I no longer believe we are all part of the same movement. There's the governance-focused, big tent, win elections and pass laws left. That's where I am. And then there's this purity test left. The ones who don't really care if we lose and sometimes seem to like it so they can say, I told you so, as long as they feel morally untainted.
Yep. That's called
they
woke.
treat compromise as corruption. They think we need a better media ecosystem must mean install CIA-approved thought leaders or something like that. So maybe we were never really part of the same movement. If I've been red-pilled about anything, maybe it's that.
Indeed.
We overlapped when convenient, and that was it. But I'm not getting red-pilled. I'm done pretending that everyone with a left-wing label is on the same page.
Blue sky
You
logo.
can stand for progress in a lot of different ways. You can want change without torching everyone who's
the end for
only
David Pakman on the
98% on your side. But no, I am not having a political awakening. I am not the next Dave Rubin. None of that.
Yeah, he is. And you know why? His views are in the gutter. Remember when he said this during the election? He was like, I'm losing so many subscribers. Holy crap, what's happening? Regular people are leaving the left. They're sick of it. They're moving on. My views haven't changed. Hey, David said the same thing. The only difference is when someone came to me and said, how many lights are there, Tim? I said 4. And they went, you're mistaken. There are 5. It says, no, I'm not. And stop lying. And if you keep lying, we're going to have problems. And David said, yeah, there's 5 lights. And now finally he's realizing he's on the wrong side of history. And so you can see the motivations of people like him. Late to the game. Why? Well, because he chose money and is willing to drop to his knees for whoever wants to pay him. Now, I will say this. I'm going to back off a little bit. Everybody should be praising David and saying, thank you for acknowledging this. What you're describing is how we define woke. Purity test, moralistic leftists who just want you to be part of whatever they say is true, regardless of whether or not it's right, regardless of whether or not they'll actually win or change anything. They're self-sabotaging, and they're pure. It's a puritanical, ideological leftism, where if you deviate in any way, they cancel you. Okay, that's been woke the whole time, the cult-like adherence to liberal orthodoxy, and David's being like, wow, I'm just now realizing this. So, as much as I don't trust the guy, that's fine. The play here is to say, thank you, David. Please tell me more. What a good person you are for explaining this, and we will fracture the cult.
So, I don't know if I agree on that, just because, and I understand wanting to be accommodating. However, I don't agree that wokeness is defined by its tactics or its characteristics in operation. This is why people apply the name woke right. They say, oh, right-wingers are behaving just like the left, therefore it's woke right. No, woke is gay race communism. And the thing with David Pakman is he hasn't changed his views.
It's not.
So it is.
It's not.
Okay. It is because he still has not changed any of his views, and so he wants to consolidate the existing gains of the revolution without jeopardizing it as a political project, because all of his co-freaks are so antisocial that they put people off. So he's hoping to repackage the same values in the same way. He's not reassessing his same priors. He wants the revolution to continue unfurling, but in a sustainable fashion. And just one final thing, it's hilarious that he says all of these CIA-approved people. Dude, you had the values of the entire deep state, of Goldman Sachs, of Walmart, until about 15 seconds ago. So the idea that you are some sort of renegade is quite pathetic.
So when you have, wokeness is not gay race communism. there is an element of the left that adheres to those ideologies, but that, I've argued this quite a bit, doesn't explain why there's the pro-Ukraine faction, which does not engage in arguments about critical theory, gender, or race. And it doesn't explain why people like David Pakman, who largely take an economic pro-war view that he largely ignores those progressive arguments and gay race communism, is still considered woke. And 2 more points, Mark Warner, who is considered a moderate Democrat, is defending Kilmar Abrego Garcia. And additionally, so that's the political element. The Jaguar commercial where they espoused nothing political, but it was a weird modern art display of bald people wearing weird pastel makeup, was also called woke. Because
they're all black and androgynous.
But that doesn't explain Mark Warner. So all of these different things that are called woke, if you put an umbrella over it, you try to ask what is the lowest common denominator that allows us to define woke, and is the cult-like adherence to liberal orthodoxy. That means David Pakman will never call out gay race communism, but he himself is not a gay race communist.
Well, liberalism is just the slow unfurling of gay race communism. Marxism and wokeness is just its eager stepchild. As far as Ukraine, the reason they support it is because they want to make it a sort of
But I'm going to pause you again, because what you're doing is you're cutting half of the woke people off because they don't hold those views. That's why that doesn't make sense.
What woke person did not fold themselves into BLM and support trans?
David Pakman.
Did he not support BLM?
He didn't call it out. He didn't question it. He largely ignored those issues, and he consistently does. It is the cult-like adherence to their orthodoxy unchallenged, which puts them in the woke camp.
I think you would find... I don't watch David Pakman's show. Like everyone else in this room, I have an IQ above 50. But I'm sure you would find an abundance of clips of him banging on about systemic racism or saying that Trump is committing some kind of transgenocide.
David Pakman has always played the moderate Democrat route, but never called out until now the excesses of the lunacy on the left. And so when we look at someone who's waving a Ukraine flag and they put it in their profile, what does that have to do with critical theory in any capacity?
Because it's not critical theory. It's human rights. It's the doctrine of the blank slate. And so they want Ukraine to be part of the international global liberal order through which universal human rights are unfurled. And both...
I hear you. The individuals in this country that don't know anything about critical theory will not argue in favor of communism, will actually criticize the ideas of communism, but march in lockstep with those things we define as woke. So the point is, there have been numerous prominent conservatives who have said woke is critical race theory, gender theory, gay race communism, etc.
Yep.
And then that isolates a core group of personalities and the entire sphere of influence for which they control, which includes prominent liberals who are pro-war in Ukraine, pro-Taiwan, anti-China, anti-Russia. It ignores them and their influence in the similar space. So when we look at what all this whole, like David Pakman, why would I describe him as woke? Because for the longest time, he has engaged in sophistry to uphold liberal orthodoxy. But he himself, in private, there are many liberals we've had on the show that do this thing where it's like, obviously trans kids is not a good thing and we shouldn't do that. And they'll actually say things like that while trying to dance around. Pisco, who we have at the Culture War, who'll be here tomorrow, he does a lot of this. He offers up oh, you're right about these things, but then uses sophistry to try and defend the whole of liberal orthodoxy. So my point ultimately is, while we do highlight individuals that are critical theorists, gender, race, or otherwise, there are prominent left that we call woke because they will protect it while privately trying to downplay it. When they say things like, I hear what you're saying on that, they will then try and convince you to come into the fold of the greater liberal orthodoxy. I'll try and keep it simple. It does not matter what is logical or true. White, blonde-haired, blue-eyed Eastern Europeans are people of color according to woke. But that defies the oppression hierarchy they also claim to uphold. They say the military-industrial complex is bad and the funding of war by the United States is bad until it comes to Ukraine. It's all completely illogical. It's almost like I describe it as a murmuration flying around randomly, and as long as you stick with it, you are in the woke sphere, whether it tilts left, right, or otherwise. David Pakman, by coming out and saying the purity test left, is finally breaking from woke by calling them out explicitly.
I think the connective tissue here that we would agree on is what we discussed when I was on the Culture War last year, which is whether or not they're congenital liberals or dyed-in-the-wool gay race communists. They all believe on the blank slate, and so they might differ on the instruments by which they achieve this latent human egalitarianism that's lying underneath everything.
I disagree. I don't think they believe in the blank slate.
You don't think David Pakman believes in the blank slate?
I would argue that David Pakman largely doesn't believe in anything except the color green and pictures of dead presidents.
Okay, well, I can't really speak to that because I don't know how disingenuous he is.
David Pakman is I mean, look at what he's saying right now, right? Let's be real. He knew what he's saying now a long time ago. Okay? Anybody of reasonable intelligence who can build a platform, create the graphics, study the algorithm of YouTube, and create a channel with millions of subscribers, and every day read the news, knows full well when they are lying. When David Pakman, my favorite clip from him, when he played a clip from MSNBC, no, I think it was NBC News. It was Chuck Todd talking to Ted Cruz. And he asked Ted Cruz, do you really believe Ukraine interfered in the U.S. election in 2016? And then Ted Cruz goes, the New York Times reported it. And then a producer starts laughing in the background. David Pakman then starts going, I can't believe it. He actually thinks that. Whoa! There's no way David Pakman, in his research to find that clip and is isolating it, didn't actually look at the New York Times story that said Ted Cruz was correct. So David Pakman is cognizant of his lies. He knows full well. I would argue, and I've known the guy for a while, not like we're good friends or anything. If you got him in private, he'd tell you outright, yeah, of course, that's completely illogical. None of it makes sense. But I've got an audience and I got to make money. So I'm going to defend them and say whatever needs to be said so that I can maintain my viewership and grow my channel and defend it. We would consider people who do that still to be woke, despite not actually following. Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.